The alarm bells rang through the massive space station, floating in the darkness between stars. Commander HFY's 4 arms moved quickly over the control panels as red warning lights flashed around him. His tall, blue-skinned body tensed as the reports came in from across the galaxy. "Sir, we have lost contact with the Third Fleet," reported his aide. A younger alien with similar features but smaller build. The Vorth Empire destroyed them in less than 2 hours. HFY's large black eyes narrowed. The Third Fleet had been one of their strongest forces, with ships that had protected the galaxy for over 100 years. Now they were gone, turned to space dust by an enemy that seemed to know exactly how to fight them. "What about the Fifth Fleet near the Kepler system?" HFY asked, though he already feared the answer. "Gone as well, sir. The Vorth used new tactics we have never seen before. Our soldiers followed all the proper combat procedures, but it made no difference." The commander walked to the large window that showed the stars beyond. For 300 years, the Galactic Defense Coalition had kept peace in this part of the universe. Their soldiers trained for decades to master the ancient fighting techniques passed down through generations. Every move was perfect, every strategy tested and proven through centuries of use. But now the Vorth Empire was tearing through their defenses like they were made of paper. These brutal aliens from the far edge of the galaxy had appeared suddenly, conquering system after system with frightening speed. They seemed to know exactly how coalition forces would respond to every situation. "How many worlds have we lost this week?" HFY asked quietly. 12, sir. The Vorth show no mercy. They destroy everything in their path." HFY turned back to his aide. "Call an emergency meeting of the High Council. We need new strategies, and we need them fast." 2 hours later, the council chamber filled with representatives from dozens of different alien species. All of them looked worried. Some had fled their home worlds when the Vorth arrived. Others had watched their entire fleets disappear in battles that should have been easy victories. "We need help," announced Council Leader Threx, a large insect-like being with multiple eyes. "Our current military cannot stop the Vorth advance. They adapt to our tactics faster than we can change them. What do you suggest?" asked another council member. "We have already called up every reserve unit in the coalition. Our best soldiers are fighting and dying out there. There is one option we have not considered," Threx said slowly. "The Outer Rim worlds, the ones we normally avoid." A wave of surprised sounds filled the chamber. The Outer Rim was full of dangerous planets that most civilized species stayed away from. The Coalition had rules about which worlds were safe to contact and which were too primitive or dangerous. "You mean the Death Worlds?" asked HFY. "Those planets are classified as too hostile for normal contact." "Exactly," Threx replied. "The beings that live on those worlds have to fight for survival every day. They might know things about combat that we have forgotten. But they are primitive," protested another council member. "What could they possibly teach us that we do not already know?" Threx brought up a holographic display showing a blue and green planet. "This is Earth. It is listed as a Class 9 death world in our databases. The dominant species there fights constantly, not just with each other, but with their own planet. Extreme weather, deadly animals, natural disasters that can destroy entire cities. And you think these humans can help us?" HFY asked. "I think we are desperate enough to try anything," Threx answered. "Our traditional methods are failing. Maybe it is time to learn from those who fight differently." The council debated for hours. Many members thought the idea was crazy. How could primitive beings from a dangerous world possibly help the most advanced military in the galaxy? Their soldiers trained for 20 years just to master basic combat techniques. What could untrained savages offer? But as more reports came in of coalition defeats, the arguments grew weaker. The Vorth were advancing toward the core worlds now. Soon they would reach the capital systems where billions of innocent beings lived. Finally, the vote was taken. By a narrow margin, the Council agreed to contact Earth. "Send the message," Threx ordered. "Tell them we need their help. Offer them whatever they want in exchange for military assistance." Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his office at the North American Defense Command. He was reviewing training reports when his communication system started beeping with an urgent message. The signal was coming from space, but not from any Earth satellite. Morrison was a career military officer, tall and lean with short brown hair and serious brown eyes. He had fought in 3 different wars and trained soldiers for 15 years. He thought he had seen everything. The message that appeared on his screen changed his mind about that. "Greetings, beings of Earth," the translated text began. "We are the Galactic Defense Coalition. We know this contact may come as a shock, but we require your assistance in a matter of urgent importance. Our galaxy faces invasion by a hostile force known as the Vorth Empire. We have studied your species and believe you may possess combat knowledge that could help us in this crisis." Morrison read the message 3 times before calling his aide. "Get me Lieutenant Chun. Tell her to bring the tactical analysis team. We have a situation." Lieutenant Amy Chun arrived 15 minutes later. She was shorter than Morrison, with black hair pulled back in a tight bun and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had degrees in military strategy and alien contact protocols, though she never thought she would need the second one. "Sir, is this some kind of test?" she asked after reading the message. "I do not think so," Morrison replied. "The transmission is coming from coordinates outside our solar system. The technology required to send the signal is far beyond anything we have." Chun studied the technical data attached to the message. "If this is real, they are offering us access to advanced technology, star charts, and formal alliance status. In exchange, they want us to participate in what they call a military consultation. What do you think?" Morrison asked. Chun was quiet for a moment. "Sir, if aliens are real and they need our help with a war, that suggests their enemies are very dangerous. If those enemies win, Earth might be next." Morrison nodded. "That is what I was thinking too. Draft a response. Tell them we will send a small team to evaluate the situation." "What kind of team?" Chun asked. "Military advisors. People who can assess their capabilities and determine how we can help." "And Chun?" "Yes, sir. Choose people who can think outside the box. If these aliens are as advanced as they claim, but still need our help, it means they are missing something important. Something we might be able to provide." As Chun left to prepare the response, Morrison looked out his window at the city below. People were going about their normal lives, unaware that their world had just been contacted by alien civilizations locked in a galactic war. Soon, some of those people would be heading into space to face enemies they could not imagine. Morrison just hoped that whatever made humans different from these aliens would be enough to make a difference in a war among the stars. The response was sent that evening. Earth would send a team of 5 military advisors to assist the Galactic Defense Coalition. What none of them knew was that this decision would change the course of galactic history forever. The human transport ship docked with the Coalition flagship 3 days after leaving Earth. Captain Jake Morrison looked through the small window as they approached the massive alien vessel. The ship was enormous, easily 50 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Its surface was smooth and white, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to glow with their own light. "Well, this is really happening," said Lieutenant Amy Chun as she checked her equipment one final time. The team had packed light, bringing only basic military gear and analysis tools. They had no idea what to expect from an alien military. Sergeant Rick Torres stretched his arms and looked around at his teammates. He was a big man with dark hair and calm eyes who had served in special forces for 8 years. Remember what? Captain Morrison said. We watch, we learn, and we keep our mouths shut until we understand what we are dealing with. Corporal Lisa Murphy nodded as she secured her gear bag. She was slim and quick, with red hair and green eyes that missed nothing. Her job was to analyze enemy tactics, but now she would be studying alien combat methods instead. Private Danny Walsh was the youngest of the group, at 22 years old. He came from a farm in Iowa and had joined the military to see the world. Now he was about to see other worlds instead. Do you think they really need our help, or is this some kind of test? He asked. We will find out soon enough, Morrison replied as the docking procedure finished. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the humans got their first look at the inside of an alien starship. Everything was clean and bright, with smooth walls that seemed to be made from one solid piece of material. There were no visible bolts, welds, or joints anywhere. The corridors were wide and tall, clearly designed for beings larger than humans. Commander Zex High waited for them in the docking bay. He was over 7 feet tall, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms that moved in perfect coordination. His uniform was spotless white with silver trim, and every piece of equipment on his belt was precisely positioned. Welcome aboard the Harmonies. Edge, he said in accented but clear English. I am Commander Zex High of the Coalition Defense Forces. We are grateful for your assistance in this difficult time. Morrison stepped forward and offered his hand. Captain Jake Morrison, Earth Defense Force, this is my team. Zex High looked at the offered hand for a moment before extending one of his own to shake it. His grip was firm but careful, as if he was afraid he might hurt the smaller human. Your species is much smaller than our databases indicated, Zex High observed. Are you certain you are capable of military operations? Torres exchanged a quick look with Murphy. It was going to be one of those assignments. We manage, Morrison replied simply. Could you show us your training facilities? We would like to understand your current methods. Zex High led them through the ship's corridors. Everything they passed was organized with military precision. Alien soldiers they encountered moved in perfect formation, their equipment maintained to an impossible standard. The humans had never seen anything so clean and orderly. Our warriors begin training at age 12, Zex High explained as they walked. They spend 20 standard years mastering the combat techniques developed over 3,000 years of military history. Each movement is practiced until it becomes perfect. They entered a massive training hall where dozens of alien soldiers were practicing combat drills. The humans watched in amazement as the aliens moved through complex fighting sequences. Every motion was smooth and controlled, like watching a deadly dance performed by masters. Impressive, Chung whispered to Morrison. Their form is flawless, but Torres was frowning as he watched. Captain, can I ask you something? He said to Zex High. Of course. What happens if the enemy does not fight the way your techniques expect them to? Zex High looked puzzled. All civilized species follow the same basic tactical principles. Combat is a science with established rules and methods. The Vorth may be brutal, but they still follow logical patterns. But what if they do not? Torres pressed. What if they do something completely unexpected? Such as what? Zex High asked. Torres thought for a moment. What if they attack from a direction you cannot see? Or use weapons in ways they were not designed for? Or break their own equipment to make it work differently? The commander's 4 arms moved in what the humans would later learn was a gesture of confusion. Why would anyone do such things? It would be inefficient and unpredictable. Sometimes. Unpredictable works, Murphy said quietly. They continued the tour, visiting weapons ranges, tactical planning rooms, and medical facilities. Everything was state-of-the-art technology that worked perfectly every time. The alien soldiers they met were polite, professional, and completely confident in their abilities. But the humans began to notice things that bothered them: the weapons. Ranges only had targets at expected distances and angles. The tactical planning rooms had maps that showed perfect terrain with clear boundaries. The combat scenarios they observed all followed predictable patterns. That evening, they were invited to observe a demonstration of elite combat techniques. The aliens called them the Apex Guard, and they were the best warriors the Coalition had to offer. Each soldier had trained for over 30 years and could perform combat moves that seemed impossible. The demonstration was held in the ship's main assembly hall. Hundreds of alien officers watched as 12 Apex Guard warriors performed a mock battle against simulated enemies. Their movements were beautiful and deadly, flowing from one perfect technique to another without pause. The crowd of alien officers applauded enthusiastically when it ended. They clearly believed they were watching the pinnacle of military skill. "What did you think?" Zexhai asked the humans afterward. Morrison chose his words carefully. "Your soldiers are extremely skilled. Their training is obviously very thorough." But Zexhai sensed there was more. Chun spoke up. "Commander, may I ask how your soldiers train for situations that are not covered in their standard techniques?" "What do you mean? Unexpected situations, equipment failures, terrain that does not match the maps, enemies who fight in ways your manuals do not describe." Zexhai's expression showed he did not understand the question. "Our training covers all possible combat situations. Our techniques have been tested in thousands of battles over centuries against enemies who fight like you do," Walsh said suddenly. Everyone looked at the young private, who realized he had spoken out of turn. "Sorry, sir. I just meant that if all civilized species fight the same way, then your techniques work because everyone follows the same rules." "Of course," Zexhai replied. "Combat is not a game. There are proper ways to fight and improper ways. Civilized beings use proper methods." Later, back in their assigned quarters, the human team held their own meeting. "They are incredibly skilled," Morrison began, "but they have never had to adapt to anything unexpected. Everything they do assumes the enemy will cooperate," Chun added. "Their weapons, their tactics, their strategies, they all depend on fighting opponents who follow the same basic rules." Torres leaned back in his chair. "Back home, we train for chaos. Equipment breaks, communications fail, the weather turns bad, the enemy does something stupid that works anyway. These aliens train for perfection. That might be why they are losing." "To the Vorth," Murphy observed. "If the Vorth are using tactics that do not follow the established rules, the Coalition forces would not know how to respond." Walsh, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. "My dad always said that no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. But these aliens seem to think their plans are so good that the enemy has to follow them." Morrison nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, we observe their strategic planning session. I want to see how they prepare for the unknown." "What if they do not prepare for the unknown?" Chun asked. "Then we might have found the problem," Morrison replied. "And hopefully, we can help them find a solution." Outside their window, the stars looked the same as they did from Earth, but the humans were beginning to realize that they were very far from home, surrounded by aliens who thought they understood war, but had never learned the most important lesson of all. The enemy gets a vote too. The next day would bring new revelations about the difference between training for war and fighting one. The training world was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. 3 different colored suns hung in the purple sky, casting strange shadows across landscape that changed from desert to jungle to mountains within a few miles. It was beautiful and alien, but the humans barely had time to look around before Commander Zexhai began explaining the exercise. "This training operation will test every aspect of our combat abilities," Zexhai announced to the assembled forces. Over 200 alien soldiers stood in perfect formation, their equipment gleaming in the triple sunlight. "We will assault fortified positions held by simulated Vorth forces. The artificial intelligence controlling the enemy has been programmed with all known Vorth tactics. Captain Morrison and his team stood to one side, watching the briefing. The scale of the operation was impressive. The aliens had constructed an entire mock battlefield covering several square miles, complete with enemy fortifications, communication networks, and defensive positions. The attack will proceed in 3 phases over 8 hours, HFY continued, pointing to a holographic display that showed the battlefield from above. Phase 1 will establish forward positions. Phase 2 will neutralize enemy communications. Phase 3 will capture the primary objective. Lieutenant Chun studied the battle plan with growing concern. Every movement was planned down to the minute. Every unit had specific routes and timing. There was no room for flexibility or change. "Sir," Morrison said, raising his hand, "what happens if the enemy adapts faster than expected?" HFY looked confused by the question. "The variables have been calculated. The Vorth follow predictable patterns based on their military doctrine. All civilized species do. But what if they don't?" Sergeant Torres asked. "What if they do something that's not in their doctrine?" "That would be illogical," replied HFY. "Military science is based on proven principles. Deviation from these principles leads to defeat." The humans exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand the problem. "The human team will be assigned a secondary objective," HFY continued. "You will secure the communication outpost on the eastern ridge. It is a simple task that will allow you to observe our primary assault." Morrison wanted to object. The simple task was clearly meant to keep them out of the way. But he decided to wait and see what happened. The exercise began 2 hours later. The alien forces moved out in perfect formation, their advance coordinated with mathematical precision. Every squad knew exactly where to be and when to be there. Their equipment worked flawlessly, and their communication was clear and efficient. Human team took a different approach. Instead of following the marked path to their objective, Torres led them off the main route to scout the terrain. "Torres, where are you going?" Morrison asked through his radio. "Sir, there's a creek bed here that's not on their maps. It runs right behind the enemy position. We could be there in half the time." "The maps are accurate," came HFY's voice over the communication channel. "Please follow the designated route." But Torres had already found something interesting. "Captain, you need to see this. The creek bed is deeper than it looks from above. We could move a whole squad through here without being detected." Meanwhile, Corporal Murphy was studying the enemy position through her binoculars. The simulated Vorth had set up their defenses exactly as the alien intelligence predicted. But Murphy noticed something the aliens had missed. "Sir, they have a blind spot," she reported. "Their sensors are positioned to watch the main approaches, but there's a gap in coverage on the north side." Private Walsh, who was monitoring enemy communications, added his own observation. "The automated defenses are running on a predictable cycle. They sweep from left to right every 45 seconds. If we time it right, we could get through without being detected." Morrison made a decision. "Forget the original plan. We're going to try something different." "Sir, we should follow the exercise parameters," Chun warned. "The exercise is supposed to test combat effectiveness," Morrison replied. "Let's see how effective we really are." While the human team began their unconventional approach, the main alien force was encountering its first problems. The simulated Vorth were not responding as expected. Instead of defending their positions in the predicted manner, they had begun moving around the battlefield in small groups, launching hit-and-run attacks. "This is not standard Vorth tactics," HFY reported to his commanders. "The AI appears to be malfunctioning." But the AI was working perfectly. It had been programmed to learn and adapt, just like real enemies would. As the alien forces continued to follow their predetermined battle plan, The artificial voice began to exploit the predictability. "Sir, the enemy is not where they are supposed to be," reported one of the alien squad leaders. "They have abandoned their assigned positions." "Then they will be defeated by our superior tactics," HFY replied confidently. "Continue with Phase 2. The human team, meanwhile, had reached their objective through the creek bed. Didn't exist on the alien maps. The enemy position was exactly where it was supposed to be, but it was designed to repel attacks from the expected direction. "Danny, can you get to that communication array?" Morrison asked Walsh. The young soldier studied the enemy installation. "Sir, it's protected by automated defenses, but they're all facing the wrong way. If I come from behind, I might be able to disable the whole system." "How?" Walsh grinned. "Same way I used to fix the equipment back on the farm. Find the main power coupling and disconnect it." "That's not a military tactic," Chun pointed out. "No ma'am, but it works." While Walsh worked his way toward the communication array, Torres and Murphy began clearing the defensive positions. They didn't use the formal combat techniques the aliens had demonstrated. Instead, they used practical methods learned from years of real-world experience. When Torres encountered an automated sentry, he didn't engage it in the expected manner. Instead, he threw dirt at its optical sensors and then attacked while it was temporarily blinded. "That's not a recognized combat technique," came a confused voice from one of the alien observers. "No, sir," Torres replied, restraining the malfunctioning robot, "but it works." Murphy found herself facing a more complex challenge. The enemy had set up a defensive position that was supposed to be impregnable according to military science. But Murphy had grown up hunting in the forests of Oregon, and she knew that there was always another way. She climbed a tree that the aliens had dismissed as tactically irrelevant and dropped down behind the enemy position. The defensive systems were designed to stop frontal attacks, not someone falling from above. "Position secured," she reported. "How?" asked the bewildered alien observer. "Gravity, sir." By the time the main alien force reached the halfway point of their 8-hour plan, the human team had completed their assigned objective and was working on secondary targets. They moved unpredictably, used terrain features the aliens had ignored, and solved problems with methods that weren't in any manual. Walsh's approach to the communication array was typical. The sophisticated alien defenses were designed to stop sophisticated attacks. They were not designed to stop someone who simply unplugged the power cables. "Communication array is down," he reported. "Explain your method," requested the exercise. "Monitor, I turned it off, sir." "That is not a valid tactical approach. It worked, sir." Morrison listened to the reports from both his team and the main alien force. His people were succeeding beyond all expectations, while the aliens were bogging down against an enemy that refused to follow the rules. "Chun, what's your assessment?" he asked. "Sir, I think we're fighting a different war than they are. They're fighting the war they trained for. We're fighting the war that's actually happening." "What do you mean?" "The aliens assume the enemy will cooperate with their plans. We assume the enemy will do everything possible to make our plans fail." Morrison nodded as he watched alien forces struggling against adaptive AI that had learned to be unpredictable. That might be the difference between training and experience. The exercise was only half over, but already the humans could see a pattern emerging. Superior training and equipment meant nothing if the enemy refused to fight according to the established rules. The question was whether the aliens would be able to learn this lesson before it was too late. 3 hours into what was supposed to be an 8-hour exercise, everything started falling apart for the alien forces. The simulated Vorth had learned to ignore the rulebook completely. They abandoned their predicted positions and began attacking from directions that made no tactical sense according to military science. Commander HFY watched the holographic battlefield display with growing alarm. Red dots representing enemy forces were moving in patterns that his computers could not predict or counter. His perfectly trained soldiers were following their orders exactly as they had been taught, but the enemy was not cooperating. Squad 7. Reports heavy resistance at Checkpoint Alpha, his aide announced. The enemy has positioned forces in terrain marked as impassable. That is impossible, Zexai replied. The terrain analysis clearly shows that area cannot support defensive positions. Nevertheless, sir, they are there and they are effective. On the battlefield, the Apex Guard was experiencing something they had never encountered in their 30 years of training. The enemy was fighting dirty. Instead of engaging in honorable combat using proper techniques, the simulated Vorth were using hit-and-run tactics, fighting from concealment, and employing weapons in ways they were never designed to be used. Squad. Leader Kethver found himself pinned down by enemy fire coming from a position that should not exist. According to his training, the proper response was to execute flanking maneuver 7 Alpha. He signaled his team and began the textbook approach. Maneuver was performed perfectly, just as it had been practiced thousands of times. But when his squad reached the predicted enemy position, no one was there. The Vorth had moved again to another impossible location. This is not how civilized warfare is conducted, Kethver reported to his commanders. Meanwhile, the human team was having the opposite experience. Every obstacle they encountered seemed to have a solution, even if that solution was not in any manual. Sergeant Torres found himself facing a heavily fortified bunker that the aliens had been trying to assault for over an hour. The structure was designed to withstand frontal attacks using conventional weapons, but Torres was not thinking conventionally. "Murphy, you still have those demo charges?" he asked. "Yes, but they're not big enough to breach those walls." "Who said anything about breaching walls?" Torres studied the bunker for several minutes, walking around it while enemy fire forced him to stay low. Finally, he found what he was looking for. "See that exhaust vent on top? It's for their air circulation system. So if we can't go through the walls, maybe we can go through the plumbing." The plan was simple and completely against regulation. Instead of attacking the bunker's strong points, Torres climbed onto the roof and dropped a small explosive charge down the ventilation system. The charge was not designed for that purpose, and the tactic was not covered in any training manual. It worked perfectly. The bunker's automated system shut down when the ventilation failed, and the defensive position became useless. "Bunker neutralized," Torres reported. "Explain your method," requested the alien exercise monitor. "I broke there." "Air conditioning, sir." There was a long pause before the monitor replied. "That is not a standard siege technique." "No, sir, but the bunker is still neutralized." Private Walsh was having similar success with a different approach. He had discovered that the enemy's sophisticated sensor network had a weakness that no alien engineer had considered. The sensors were designed to detect military equipment and proper combat formations. They were not programmed to notice a single soldier moving very slowly and acting like he belonged there. "I'm walking right past their sensors," Walsh reported in amazement. "They think I'm maintenance personnel." "How is that possible?" Chun asked. "I'm carrying a toolbox and walking like I'm supposed to be here. Their computers are looking for soldiers, not repairmen." Walsh reached the enemy command center and looked around at the sophisticated equipment. Everything was protected by multiple security systems and automated defenses. A proper military assault would require specialized equipment and coordinated attacks. Instead, Walsh pulled out a simple wire cutter from his toolbox. "Main enemy communications going down in 3, 2, 1. He cut a cable that looked important. Entire enemy command network went dark. "How did you know which cable to cut?" asked the astounded alien observer. "Back home, when the internet goes out, it's usually because someone cut the main cable. I figured it worked the same way here." Lieutenant Chen had positioned herself where she could monitor both human and alien operations. What she saw confirmed her worst fears about the aliens' approach to warfare. "Captain Morrison, you need to hear this," she called over the radio. Morrison joined her at the observation post and listened to the alien communication channels. The reports were increasingly desperate. "Enemy forces have abandoned assigned positions and are using non-standard tactics," came one report. "Request permission to deviate from operational plan," came another. "Permission denied." "Continue with Phase 2 as scheduled," was Zexhi's response. "Sir, the enemy is not cooperating with Phase 2. "Then we will proceed to Phase 3. Morrison shook his head in disbelief. "They're so committed to their plan that they can't see it's not working." Chun pointed to her tactical display. "Look at this. The alien forces are still trying to execute their original strategy, even though the situation has completely changed. They've lost the initiative and they don't know how to get it back. What about our people? Torres has neutralized 4 enemy positions using methods that aren't in any textbook. Murphy has found 3 different routes through terrain the aliens said was impassable. Walsh has disabled half the enemy's electronic systems by treating them like broken farm equipment." Morrison studied the battlefield situation. The aliens had superior numbers, better equipment, and decades more training. But they were losing to an enemy that refused to follow the rules. His small human team, meanwhile, was succeeding precisely because they had never learned those rules in the first place. "Chun, patch me through to Zexhi." Captain Morrison to Commander Zexhi. "Sir, I think we need to talk." "Captain, I am rather busy at the moment. The exercise is not proceeding as expected." "That's exactly what I want to talk about. Sir, your forces are failing because they're fighting the war they trained for instead of the war they're actually in. I do not understand. The enemy has adapted. They're not following your predictions anymore. But your people are still following the same plan. The plan is based on sound military principles tested over centuries. Sir, with respect, the enemy doesn't care about your principles. They're doing whatever works." There was a long pause before Zexhi replied. "What do you suggest?" Morrison looked at his team, scattered across the battlefield and succeeding against impossible odds through pure improvisation and determination. "Let us show you how we fight when there are no rules. But there must be rules. Without rules, warfare becomes chaos." "Yes, sir," Morrison replied. "Sometimes chaos is exactly what you need." The conversation was interrupted by another report from the alien forces. Squad after squad was reporting failure. The enemy had learned to predict their movements and counter their techniques. The Apex Guard, with all their training and skill, were being outfought by an artificial intelligence that had learned to cheat. Meanwhile, Torres was using a broken enemy vehicle as a ladder to reach a position that was supposed to be unreachable. Murphy was communicating with hand signals that confused even their own monitoring equipment. Walsh was rewiring enemy equipment to work for the human side instead. The aliens fought like scientists. The humans fought like survivors. And on a battlefield where the only rule was that there were no rules, the survivors were winning. 4 hours into the exercise, Commander Zexhi faced the most difficult decision of his military career. His forces were failing against an enemy that refused to follow any logical pattern. Squad after squad reported positions overrun, communications disrupted, and objectives lost to tactics that made no sense according to 3,000 years of military science. "Sir, we have lost 60% of our assigned objectives," his aide reported. "The enemy AI has adapted beyond our ability to predict." Zexhi looked at the holographic display showing the battlefield. Red enemy markers were scattered everywhere, moving in patterns that his computers could not calculate. His own blue markers were clustered in defensive positions, following procedures that were no longer effective. Then he looked at the 5 green markers representing the human team. They were deep behind enemy lines, having accomplished not only their original objective, but several others that his own forces had failed to secure. "Get me Captain Morrison," Zexhai ordered. The human captain's voice came through the communication. "System clearly. Morrison here, Commander." "Captain, I am requesting your assistance in coordinating the final phase of this exercise." There was a pause before Morrison replied. "Sir, are you asking us to take command?" "I am asking you to show us how to fight an enemy that does not follow the rules." Morrison's team gathered at a central position where they could coordinate with the scattered alien forces. The alien soldiers looked confused and demoralized. Everything they had trained for was failing against an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. "Listen up, everyone," Morrison announced over the general communication channel. "We're going to try something different. Forget your training manuals for the next hour. Forget the proper procedures. The enemy is adapting faster than we can plan, so we're going to stop planning." "Sir, how can we operate without tactical plans?" asked one of the alien squad leaders. "We're going to react instead of plan. When something doesn't work, we try something else immediately. When the enemy does something unexpected, we do something even more unexpected back." Lieutenant Chun took over the tactical coordination. But instead of creating detailed battle plans, she began giving real-time directions based on what was actually happening on the battlefield. "Squad 3, the enemy just moved out of position Alpha 7. There's a gap in their line. Torres, can you get there?" "Already moving," came Torres's reply. "I see the gap. Give me 5 minutes." "Squad 5, your frontal assault isn't working." Murphy found a way around to the left through some rocks the enemy can't see. "Follow her lead." The alien soldiers were confused at first. They were used to detailed orders that told them exactly where to go and what to do. Now they were being told to follow a human who was making up tactics as she went along, but it worked. Squad 5 found themselves behind enemy positions that had been holding them back for over an hour. The enemy had been prepared for another frontal assault, not for soldiers who climbed over rocks that were marked as impassable on the maps. Private Walsh had discovered something that changed the entire battle. The enemy's central computer system was located in a facility that was supposed to be unreachable. The aliens had tried to assault it 3 times using proper siege techniques, and failed each time. Walsh took a different approach. He noticed that the facility's power came from a generator that was outside the main defensive perimeter. The generator was protected, but not from someone who approached it like a maintenance worker instead of a soldier. "I'm at the power station," Walsh reported. "This thing has an emergency shutdown switch right on the outside. Should I flip it?" "That would be sabotage, not combat," protested one of the alien observers. "Sir, we're trying to win, not follow." "Rules," Morrison replied. Walsh, shut it down. The entire enemy command facility went dark. Without central coordination, the simulated Vorth forces began operating independently, making them much easier to defeat. Sergeant Torres was leading a mixed group of human and alien soldiers against a fortified position. The aliens wanted to use textbook assault techniques. Torres had a simpler idea. "See that pile of junk over there?" He pointed to wreckage from an earlier battle. "We're going to build a ramp." "A ramp?" "The enemy fortification is designed to stop attacks from ground level. What if we attack from above?" For the next 20 minutes, humans and aliens worked together to build an improvised ramp from battlefield debris. It was not a tactic covered in any manual, but it allowed them to approach the enemy position from an angle that the defenses could not cover. The enemy AI tried to adapt, moving forces to counter the new threat. But Corporal Murphy was already implementing the next phase of the attack. "While they're watching our ramp, I'm going through their garbage disposal," she reported. "Their what?" "Every facility has to get rid of waste somehow. I found where they dump their trash. The chute leads right into the center of their base." Murphy emerged inside the enemy facility through a route that no military planner had ever considered. Within minutes, the position was neutralized from the inside dot as the final hour of the exercise approached. The combined human-alien forces were advancing on all fronts. The enemy AI, designed to adapt to conventional tactics, could not keep up with the chaotic creativity of Deathworld thinking. "Final objective in sight," reported Chun. "The enemy command center is heavily defended, but Walsh found their water supply." "Their water supply? Every facility needs clean water." Walsh followed the pipes and found where they connect to the main system. "He's going to add some of our smoke grenades to their water tank. That seems unnecessarily complex," observed Zexhai. "Sir, when their air filtration shuts down because of the smoke, they'll have to evacuate the building. Then we can walk right in." The plan worked exactly as predicted. The enemy command center, designed to withstand military assault, was evacuated due to what appeared to be a plumbing problem. The human-alien team secured the final objective without firing a shot. The exercise ended 4 hours and 37 minutes after it began, instead of the planned 8 hours. Every major objective had been accomplished, and the adaptive enemy AI had been completely defeated. In the debriefing session, Zexhai studied the tactical recordings with amazement. "How did you predict that the enemy would respond to your unconventional tactics?" Morrison smiled. "We didn't predict anything, sir. That's the point. We reacted to what actually happened instead of what we thought should happen." "But how can you plan military operations without predicting enemy responses?" "You can't plan for everything," Chun explained. "On Earth, we learn to adapt because our planet is constantly trying to kill us. Storms, earthquakes, floods, predators. We survive by dealing with whatever comes next, not by following a predetermined plan." Torres added, "Your soldiers are incredibly skilled, sir, but they've never had to fight for survival against something that doesn't follow any rules." "We have." Zexhai looked at his own tactical officers, then back at the humans. "You are saying that your world's hostility made you better warriors?" "Not better," Morrison corrected. "Different. We fight like everything depends on winning, because on Earth it usually does." The final reports of the exercise were transmitted throughout the Coalition fleet. Within hours, military commanders across the galaxy were requesting human advisors. The Fourth Empire, monitoring Coalition communications, intercepted the reports and quietly withdrew their invasion fleet. They were not ready to face an enemy that treated the impossible as merely inconvenient. "Commander, Zexhai's final log entry would be studied in military academies for generations. The humans do not simply fight, they improvise warfare itself. Recommend immediate integration of Deathworld tactical training into all Coalition forces. The galaxy has much to learn from these remarkable beings."